Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Manxiety Podcast.
We're your hosts, Ashad and Matt. Before we get started, if you're enjoying this show, please subscribe so you can get notified of new episodes.
If you want to share this with your friends, you can find us on all podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
This week, we'll be continuing our Stoicism series with part 3. So in the last two episodes regarding Stoicism, we went through, sort of Stoicism at a high level, went through some Stoic exercises, we talked through them, gave you guys a bunch of quotes, which I'm sure all of you guys memorized and haven't forgotten at this point. But we'll be diving right back into our Stoicism part 3 and continuing with some of those Stoic exercises that we mentioned previously. So the final 3 exercises are, I wouldn't say dark or on the darker side. But, I mean, Halloween is coming up, so yeah, maybe they're a little bit on the darker side.
If it was coffee, it'd be a little on the bitter side.
It'll be like a French roast. Bold and dark. Anyway, the first of those 3 exercises is called Memento Mori. And Memento Mori is a practice that Stoics use to meditate on their mortality, right? And so, again, start off with the quote from Seneca regarding Memento Mori. He says, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time." And so, what they're trying to say is, there's a variation of this that's been sort of popularized in modern culture or in popular culture these days, called YOLO. You only live once. I mean, they're kind of similar in the fact that they're both kind of saying that, you're going to live once, so make sure that you live sort of life to the fullest, right? However, I think the YOLO for the one that's popularized is a little bit more on the you're only going to live once, so do whatever the hell you want. Whereas Memento Mori doesn't say do whatever you want. It says that, you're going to die someday, right? But you don't know what day that's going to be because we're all mortals. So just make sure that you live each day as if it were your last, right? So, make sure you, tell the people you care about that you care about them. Make sure that you, do the things you love, right? Make sure that you never, argue with someone and leave it at that, or whatever it is, whatever that means to you. Just knowing that, if you went to bed tonight and did not wake up tomorrow, you would be okay. You would be happy, or maybe not happy, but you would be content at sort of the life you've lived to that point. So that's sort of the biggest part of that. And it really went back, that practice of reflecting on mortality went back all the way back to Socrates, who said that the proper practice of philosophy is about nothing else but dying and being dead. And in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, there's one of the meditations, or one of the parts of the journal where he writes, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Right. So it's about keeping that in mind, right? Don't say something you're going to regret. Don't do something you're going to regret. And don't think in a way that you're going to regret, because you may not be able to say, do, or think tomorrow.
Yeah, this is a really great practice. You see a lot of people get tattoos of Memento Mori, and it's interesting because we as human beings know that we will die, right? We don't know if animals know in the same way that we can, philosophize about it. right? We don't know if our pets know it. They know when they get older and they hurt and they feel pain and stuff, right? That like something's wrong, but they can't really maybe not communicate what's going to happen, right? But we're told at a very young age, like, oh, one day you're going to die. Like, people that have passed away suddenly, things like that. And to be able to reflect on it and look at it for the positive things of it, right? Like, if you're not happy with the way your life is, right? I know a shot used content, right, instead of happy, because we don't want you to be happy that you died, right, if you passed away. But it's like, if you're not living your life to the fullest, what do you think is going to change? Like, what do you need for you to have that wake up call? And for a lot of people, it is that near death experience.
Somebody or losing someone near to them.
Right. They suffer loss, or they come close to, a tragic end, like in a car crash or something, an accident of some sort. And they start to think, well, shit, I don't have forever. Right. I think that was something that I learned through lockdowns and COVID, and seeing family members pass away from it and stuff, was like, damn, I'm still pretty young. I still kind of feel invincible, but I'm not. And I try to be very aware of that, in my daily actions, because even when you hop on the freeway, something bad could happen on the freeway if you're not paying attention, right? Everybody thinks, I can drive and text. It's not going to happen to me until it does. So thinking about your actions, that, like, are you living your life right now in accordance to your values? And if this was truly the last day, would you be happy with it, right? Would you, or content, like Ashad said, would you be okay with it overall? And if not, maybe reflect on that and then think about changing it. And that's why, this one can be depressing, right? But it can also be very enlightening when it allows yourself the time to reflect on it and think, here's where things are. Where do I want them to go? Right? It kind of helps you goal set for it. And I think it's very important. It's one of the important ones. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think it's depressing if you're missing the point of why you do it, right? It's not about like continually reminding yourself that I'm gonna die, right? Like, that's not what it's about. It's about, it's about invigorating you, and it's about giving you purpose, right? Giving you motivation, and also humbling you a little bit, right? Making you realize that, you only have so long. So like, do what you love, tell the people around you, how you feel, like, spend time with them, like, do all the things that make you happy, and surround yourself with people that make you happy, or whatever that means to you, right? That's what it's really about. And I think because it's so hard to really think on that sometimes, a lot of people choose not to. And sort of throughout history, this is my own take on this, but throughout history, people have come up with ways to circumvent their mortality, right? And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at different religions, right? So let's say Christianity, because I'm a baptized Christian. So Christianity says that after you die, you go to heaven, right? And in heaven, whatever, it's all great, it's all fun, good times. I feel like that kind of puts people at a disadvantage, because even though it allows them to avoid avoid memento mori, meditating on their mortality, because they know that after they die, they're going to go somewhere else, it's going to be great and fun and whatever. It also kind of, in my opinion, makes people feel like they can do whatever they want. Because, as long as you believe in Christianity, and you go and repent for your sins, and, and all that, then you'll be admitted into heaven. So I feel like it's kind of dangerous. At least my opinion on it is that it's kind of dangerous not to do this, right? Not to think about your mortality, and to just accept that, as long as you confess, whatever in your religion, whatever that means, right? There is an afterlife, and as long as you follow these rules, then you're going to go to the afterlife. So that's one of the big practices is memento mori. The next,
We should say that in Latin it actually doesn't mean remember that you die or remember that you have to die.
right?
So
right,
it's like a
thank
lot
you.
of people get it tattooed as like remember death or remember that it's fleeting. That's why they get it tattooed, even though tattoos are mostly permanent.
There's actually another quote that I really like. I just don't remember the exact words of it. I'm trying to find it right
I
now.
mean, I'm shopping for new tattoos, dude. What if I just get this on the bicep? Memento mori.
For new tattoos.
Yeah, new tattoos. I already have one.
That's funny.
I need more.
Anyway, there was a quote that basically went. It was something along the lines of, um, it was like, today I died, but because I died, or how does it go? No, it's like, think think as if you've died yesterday, and that today is a new life. Now start living it, or something along those lines. You know which one I'm talking about?
No, but it reminded me of something else. I don't remember if you've seen Peaky Blinders.
I've seen some of the first season.
Okay, well, not I won't mention the characters, but half spoilers for people who know what I'm talking about. Somebody dies in the show. A lot of people die in the show. Whatever. Um, but somebody's giving a speech about it, right? And the speech is essentially like, even though he died today, really we all died back in the war because they went through a war and they were fighting in the war, and they thought they were all dead because like the soldiers were outside their building ready to fire, and like this miracle happened, they had to disperse or whatever, right? Type of thing. And they were like, we swore on that day that every day after we would never take for granted because we're already dead men. Like we've already accepted that we should have died there, so every day after is a blessing. And,
Yeah, and
I thought that was beautiful.
no, that's really good. And the quote I was looking for, I found it. So it's from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, and the quote is: "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left of it and live properly."
Hell yeah. Well, I mean, Marcus Aurelius had a ton of tragedy in his life too, right?
He did.
Didn't like his son pass away super young?
He had kids pass away. I mean, his parents. He was taken from his parents, taught to rule a kingdom at a young age. There was a war. There was a pandemic. Like, he had a lot going on. But I mean, he did well. Did well for himself. So the next Stoic practice is called premeditatio malorum. And premeditatio
Gesundheit.
malorum. What?
Gesundheit.
Thank you. And premeditatio malorum is the premeditation of evils. So what this exercise is imagining things that could go wrong or could be taken away from us, right? So thinking about all of the things that can go wrong. And the way that this helped the Stoics and can help everyone else is that it helps us prepare for life's inevitable setbacks. So that instead of, if something happens, right, instead of being surprised by it and having to deal with this new situation that arose at the moment, you think about it before, and you think about, what you can do so that if something does happen, you're prepared. So I, on the Therapy Thursday episode, I spoke about the party that I was going to have, right? So imagine if I was using the Stoic practice for that party, and I was thinking about, all right, well, what if it rains, right? And we're having the party outdoors. What if it rains, and the party gets ruined? Okay. So I start thinking like these negative or these setbacks that can happen. And so I start coming up with a plan. Well, if it rains, and I'm doing this all before, if it rains, well, maybe I can move the beer pong table into my garage, and I can move the chairs underneath my patio, right? And we can move part of the party inside and turn on the heater and leave the doors open, right? So I thought about all this before. So now if it does rain, I already have a plan, right? It's not going to surprise me. It's not going to ruin the party because I've already made plans for it. same thing with anything else, right? You know, what if Costco runs out of pizza for the party and I can't go and grab it? Well, you know, you think about what else you can do. Little Caesars has $5 hot and ready pizzas. I can stop by there, pick up a whole bunch of those, and bring them over, and party's been saved. The pizza's there. So that's sort of what it is. I mean, obviously, those are very sort of basic examples, but it's still that's what the practice is. And I've kind of started doing this sort of as second nature at this point. So you know, I think about the kinds of things that can go wrong, at least at a broad scale, and, you know, have some sort of idea of how I would manage them. But as with any of these practices, another quote, and this one is from Seneca, who says, or who, I guess he did say it, what is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events. Rehearse them in your mind: exile, torture, war, shipwreck. All the terms of our human lot should be before our eyes. Again, sort of going off what I said, right? The hardest part is the unexpectedness of a disaster or of something going wrong. It's not that it happens, it's that it was unexpected. So as long as you prepare for that, as long as you prepare for everything, right? The hardest part, you've just taken out the hardest part. Disaster can still happen, but you've got a plan. You're not, you're not caught by surprise.
This is very much in line with the phrase, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And being able to imagine that those things are gone is very helpful, not only for forming plans. I'm sure we do this all the time with people with anxiety, but also because then you realize life goes on. And kind of pairing it with memento mori, not only will you die, your loved ones, your friends, your family, your pets, everybody at one point of this earth will perish. So having those thoughts as well of, like, you know, when you're in a fight with somebody and you're screaming at your brother or your sister or something, right? Like, you're an asshole and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then taking that step back a day later, whenever it is, to be like, well, shit, like, what if I lost them, right? I was upset, I was heated. It's not worth it. There are bigger things at play here, like that you go apologize, you can swallow your pride, all those things, right? Like, they're still around, they're still there. Because imagine, like, that was the last time you ever got to talk to them, was like you having that fight with them, right? And yeah, if you imagine disaster, you'll eventually be able to prevent it. And part of that is the confidence to know whatever happens, you'll be able to handle it, right? If there's an earthquake where we live, we'll be able to handle it because we can figure out how to, you know, be in a stressful situation and figuring out what to do, right? Making sure everybody's okay. Okay, everybody in the house is okay. Great. Do we have food? Do we have water? You know, like running through that checklist in your mind, right? That's why you do disaster preparedness kits or like earthquake kits where we live. But that's also why they teach you shit like, hey, stop, drop, and roll. Like, if you're ever on fire, stop, drop, and roll, right? Like, yep. That's buried into our psyche when we're little kids. To think, hey, I mean, hopefully you're never on fire, but hey, if I was on fire, I know what to do, right? Stop, drop, and roll. Like, if you just stop and hammer time, sorry, bad joke, it's not going to be good for you.
No, it's funny. I've never actually seen anyone on fire that's had to do that.
Me neither. The only people I've ever seen on fire are in movies, and it's always witches, and like they're tied to the stake.
Yeah, so they're never dropping or rolling. They're always just stopped.
Right. I think this is one of the big lies we were taught as kids.
I know.
Because technically, if you're on fire, you probably shouldn't drop down and roll. You should probably pat yourself down.
Well, no,
right?
I
like
think you are supposed to stop, drop, and roll.
Well, I guess if your whole body's on fire.
Yeah. But yeah, so going back to premeditatio malorum, I read the quote from Seneca, but something that he would do, and this is a really good example, is he would begin by reviewing or rehearsing his plans, right? To say, like, to take a trip. So then in his head, he would go over things that could go wrong or prevent it from happening. a storm could arise, the captain could fall ill, the ship could be attacked by pirates. And what he would, write in his journal and what he wrote to a friend was that nothing happens to the wise man against his expectations, nor do all things turn out for him as he wished, but as he reckoned. And above all, he reckoned that something could block his plans. So it's saying that nothing may go, not all things may go to planned, like as planned, but all things can go sort of as expected, right? Like as long as you're prepared for it, you can be prepared for all things. Now that I think back on this, I think a lot of my ability to do this probably comes from playing chess. And the reason for that, right, even though you're probably thinking, how does chess have anything to do with, premeditating evils, is because when you're playing chess, you're always thinking many steps ahead, right? You're not only thinking about the move that you make now, you're thinking about, okay, so if I make this move, what are all of the possible moves that my opponent is going to make, right? And then, based on all those possible moves, now you think about, all right, well, if he makes each of these moves, what are the possible moves I am going to make? And you're thinking, sometimes 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of what you're going to do. And again, you're not only looking at one, like you have to look at all of these tie into each other. If you remember from last week's, or not last week's, but from Stoicism Part 2, taking the view from above, right? It all ties into it together because, again, in chess, you might be so focused on this one move you made and this one way that you've planned out you're going to checkmate them, that you forget to look at the view from above and see that on the other side, they're getting ready to checkmate you and they're about to take you down. So I think that's why, for me, it's easy to do this because I've played chess since from a very young age with my grandpa. And so I've learned to do this, right? I've learned to think multiple steps ahead, to think about all of the different moves that the other person can make and to come up with plans for all of them. So I'm not surprised. Now, does my grandpa still beat me? He does, right? He's still better. Although last time he was over, I beat him twice. So I'm pretty happy about that. But, it is something that does take training and, you have to continue doing to keep up and to be able to improve on. It's not something that you can learn overnight, but, maybe you start off with something small. I don't know, something, like we were saying, something you're maybe a little bit excited for. Let's say going to the movies or going to a party or something. Yeah, Matt has one.
Well, there's also this practice that pretty much relates, but they use it in business called a premortem. So postmortem meaning after death, premortem is before death, right? Like analyzing what went wrong. Right. So in this case of that same situation, we could take like your party, but you say like, okay, the day of the party comes and it was a terrible experience. What happened? So you look at it from kind of like reverse engineering it. So you could say, well, it was terrible because it rained. So you have a plan for the rain. It was terrible because Costco ran out of pizza. So I have an alternative. It was terrible because I didn't have individual bags of chips. Everybody was putting the same hands in the same bags and people's dirty hands ruined the chips. Okay. So you buy the 72 pack at Costco of Lay's chips or whatever, right? So people have that crap. Okay. I didn't have cups. I didn't have this. I didn't have this. You think of everything in that same way that could go wrong with it, but kind of in the reverse step of as if it had already happened. So you're right. Like, the party was terrible. I feel so bad. What went wrong? And then walking back is kind of the same thing. And I do this all the time in a business perspective because it's like, hey, this new project we're working on absolutely failed. What did we do wrong? And it could be a year out. And people are like, well, we didn't set proper expectations. We didn't do this. We didn't do this. I was like, right. So now we know what we need to do to actually meet the goals.
Right.
So
no, that is actually very good. And I mean, again, same practice, just approaching it in a different way.
Yeah, it's just maybe an easier way for people at home to digest it instead of like, shit, what if I get hit by lightning and I'm paralyzed from the waist down? Just do it in small steps with the events that you're doing throughout your daily life, right? I'm gonna ask this girl out. What went wrong, right? I don't know. Anything.
I mean, we can go through practice right now. So I have a hunting trip planned, right, in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So we can, and I've already done some of this and I've started preparing because I've been doing this. But you start going down the list, right? All right. So I have a hunting trip planned. So let's say we go with what can go wrong, right? We're not able to find a place to stay. Okay, a place to camp out. All right, so what do we have to do about that? Well, we got to look for places now so that we can make sure we make a reservation so that we can camp out there if available, or find a place that offers free open camping so that we can go there. All right, so I started, already. I looked into all the campgrounds in the area, looked into which ones are close to where I want to be. I found one that was available. I booked it, right? So one check, that one's been taken care of. Next one is, well, what if it's cold, right? What if it's very cold during that time because we're up in the mountains? Or we don't know how the weather will be. What if the weather ruins the hunt? Let's put it that way. Well, so what I did is I went through historic weather records, right, for that area for the last 2 or 3 years, right? I saw the average temperatures. And so now I know within some degree of certainty what the average temperature is going to be. I also called the ranger.
Degree of certainty?
Yes.
Get it? Degree?
Yeah, I get it. I also called the ranger there, right? And I asked the ranger, hey, what's the weather like right now? What's the weather like this time of year? What should I expect? So, by doing this activity now, I've taken that out as a problem. What if it rains? Well, if it rains, my tent is, good enough to last in the rain. I'll be taking a rain jacket to make sure that I can stay, dry. And I'll be taking clothes to keep me warm. So you got to go through all this, right? I checked the website and you're not allowed to have open fires, right? So no campfires, nothing like that. All right, so, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take a propane stove. Well, what if the propane stove doesn't work? Well, we're going to take a backup stove that has propane as well, or that has something else. So, again, I go through all of these in my head and I start preparing for all of it so that when the time comes, it's not unexpected. I've already planned for it. I already know what I'm going to do if something happens. Now, will unexpected things happen? Of course. You can't. There's no way I can plan for every single eventuality. Yes.
What if you find Bigfoot?
What if I find Bigfoot? That's a good one. I hadn't thought of that one. What will I do if I find Bigfoot? Well, first of all, I would probably try to greet him. See if he talks back. Who knows? He might talk back to me and say hello. If he does, then I make friends and we have a couple shots together. If I try to greet him and that doesn't happen and he gets violent, well, there's a reason I keep, a pistol on me when I'm hunting so that if something comes too close, I'm ready to go. So, again, you got to be prepared for all these things.
That was great. I mean, at no point did you say I would take a picture and post it to the internet. You were just like, I'm gonna handle this shit. I'm either gonna make a friend or I'm gonna shoot his ass.
Well, no, I mean, if he's gonna attack me, then obviously I'm gonna defend myself. And if he's not gonna attack me, I'll make friends. Like, why would I put it on the internet? There's a reason.
Bro, if you found Bigfoot, you're famous, dude. Put that on the internet. We'll have him on the podcast, dude.
He doesn't want to be found.
He probably sounds like Chewbacca, dude. Just.
If he wanted to be found, he would have come out already. So the fact that he doesn't want to be found, I'm not going to be the one to find him. I'll make friends with him and I'll go visit him every now and then.
That was a test. You're a true friend.
Some of us have to be. Oh yeah, shots fired. Anyway, last Stoic exercise is something called amor fati. What's amor fati, Matthew?
Amor fati is a Latin phrase, because everything's derived from Latin. Love of fate or love of one's fate.
You know it. And what does amor fati mean?
That's what it means. Love of fate.
Right, but what's the practice?
Oh.
I feel like I went through all the other ones. I feel bad. I don't want to take the spotlight away from you.
Oh, no, you're great. I love listening to you explain it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'll start off this one with a quote, too. Marcus Aurelius. To love only what happens, what was destined, no greater harmony. So, something big in Stoicism is, and not only in Stoicism, it's also big in a lot of religions, a lot of beliefs, is this basically this concept of fate, right? Like everyone has some sort of fate, and we live sort of within the realm of that fate. Now, me personally, not a big believer in fate, right? Put that out there right now. I practice Stoicism. I practice pretty much everything. This one exercise I don't practice. There's a reason for it that I'll explain later. But first, the exercise. So another one from Marcus Aurelius, right? He says, he writes, "A blazing fire masks flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Epictetus, who was a crippled slave and had faced diversity, said, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens the way it happened, that what happens the way it happens. Then you will be happy." Right? So there's this very big belief in Stoicism, at least ancient Stoicism, in fate, in things having a way that they're supposed to happen, and you, as a person, going along with it, right? Not going against it. So, when you live your life, making sure that you live it the way that nature intended, in a sense. And for them, a lot of it has to do with nature, right? For the Stoics, it wasn't necessarily about a god or, something like that. It was more along the lines of living with how nature intended for us to live, being with nature, not doing anything that goes against our nature. So that's more along the lines of how the Stoics believed amor fati fit in to their lives. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, also from the article referencing as well, it does say that, essentially the idea is that the mindset that you take on for making the best out of anything that happens, treating each and every moment, no matter how challenging, as something to be embraced, not avoided, to not only be okay with it, but to love it and be better for it. So I think that probably what you're going to talk about is how you can control your own fate, right? And how, like, you have to make choices that back up what you want to do in life and so on and so forth. But for them, back in the day when they were talking about this, a lot of them were dealt very rough hands. There were plagues, there was famine, there was premature death all over the place. And for them, it was like, well, that's just fate, right? If I become emperor, that's my fate, right? They very much believed that things were foretold for them at birth or pre-birth sometimes. So it could be that, like, whatever happens, right? Like, if I'm, I don't know, like, crippled in an accident, I was supposed to happen for a reason, right? It's a challenge and things like that. Like, you can be upset and everything, but the way I interpret it is that, like, whatever happens, you have to see it as, like, to embrace what's happening to you, right? Whether you're dictating your fate or not, it's like you're still in control of it. But if something happens and you can't control it, then for me, that's where it's just like, okay, just ignore it, right? So, like, if you, I don't know, like, let's say you're preparing for, like, an interview or something, right? And you go and you prepare and you interview and you don't get the job, well, then, like, that was fated to happen, let's say. But okay, you just move on from it, right? Like, it didn't happen, so what? What's next? Like, what's the next step? What can you control in the situation? So what's your interpretation of it? Like, why don't you agree with that? I'm curious.
Well, so I mean, the part that I don't agree with is, like you said, the fate part, right? Because I'm just not a big believer in fate. I think that, every person's choices lead them to, lead them to live the life that they live, or not necessarily their choices, but, their choices, their circumstances, the things that they're put through. There are parts of it that I do agree with, right? So I'm very much of the belief that whatever happens to us, right, you have to accept it and, use it as something to make you better or improve, use it as a way to improve or make your life better. But regardless, you have to accept it because it happened and there's nothing you can do about it. So with that piece, I'm okay. So I guess it's not that it's the whole thing that I don't agree with. It's just personally, I don't know. It's hard for me to accept that, you know, if you believe in the old Greek gods, that there's the three fates sitting there, braiding your life's yarn or whatever and dictating how you're gonna live.
So I just thought of this. This maybe relates how we both might feel about it. Is it's kind of like nature versus nurture, and what a lot of people say now is like, in terms of like the way you were genetically predestined to be a certain thing. It's like that's I think what they say is that that's like the gun, but then your actions pull the trigger on it. So like even if you have like a genetic, let's say you're genetically predisposed to like process sugar in a way that spikes your insulin and you're more likely to have diabetes. Well, you can still control the food that you eat to make the decision to not have that health concern later in life, right? Like you still very much like have your choices. So what I'm kind of hearing is that you're saying like you don't like it when people are like, well, I'm just fated to be this thing, and they take all the onus off themselves, and they're like, well, fuck, like I guess I just wasn't meant out for this position, and I wasn't meant to do that thing, so like whatever. But it's like you can control a lot more than you realize up until that point.
No, that's totally what it is. You hit it right on. That's actually exactly what it is. I hate it when people tell me, this is just how I am, or this is just how things are, or, like you said, I'm fated for this, or whatever. Like, regardless of, think about it in poker, right? A good poker player, regardless of the hand they're dealt, well, I don't want to say that, not regardless of the hand they're dealt, but they can be dealt a very shitty hand, and they can win the round with that hand. And because it's not the cards in their hand that dictates how they're going to play. It's their own abilities, their own play style, right? They may have the shittiest hand in the history of poker. They might have, I don't know, low cards, all different suits, whatever it is. But they may, they may be able to sell the fact and make other people believe that they have a royal flush and they can win that round. And obviously that's a very loose example, but I don't know, when I ran a marathon, right? People were like, 26 miles, how did you do it? How did you do that? How did you do this? I can never do that. And I'm always like, but you can. You just choose not to. Like, I mean, I don't want to say I never thought I could, but it's not like I woke up one day and I was like, I'm going to go and start running, and I just ran 26 miles, right? I'm not Forrest Gump. That's not what happened. I decided that I want to run a marathon, right? I started small. I was like, all right, I want to run a marathon, so I'll start with the half marathon. Before the half marathon, I did a 5K, right? I started practicing. I started doing research. How best to run, what time to run, what form I need to use, what kind of training I should do to build up to that. And then once I'd done the 5K, I went to, I did the half marathon. And then when I did the half marathon, I already had an idea of, this is what I need to work on. I was able to get there. Like, I forgot my water when I did my half marathon. There were all these things. I didn't pace myself well. So I ran my half marathon faster than what I had been pacing, which you might say, well, that's a great thing, but it's not, because if I was running a full marathon, I wouldn't be able to make it to the end because I had run faster. Right? So, like, there's all these things you learn and you iterate and you get better and better. It's funny because someone reached out to me the other day. They'd seen my LinkedIn profile, and they called me and they're like, I was really impressed by your profile, this and that. I really like your LinkedIn header. And my header says, in permanent beta. Right? And I think that's how we should approach everything. Is that it's always in beta. You're always iterating, you're always learning, and you're always improving. Because once you say that something is complete, well, then you've sort of let it be. You've decided that that's the extent of your ability or the extent of what you can do. And don't want to say you've given up, but there's nowhere else it can go. Yeah, so that's my big thing with fate. But again, amor fati is a little bit. It goes a little bit beyond that, right? Like fate, I think, is a part of it, but another part of it is that putting your energy and emotions into exertions only where they will have real impact, right? Saying that is that place we will tell ourselves, this is what I've got to do or put up with. Well, I might as well be happy about it. And when you were asking me about it was on Therapy Thursday episode about like my yard work, right? And like my housework and being excited for things. The thing is, like, I have work to do. I need to do it anyway. So I might as well be excited about it. Or even if I'm not excited or happy about it, I still got to do it, right? So I accept it. I accept that it's something I have to do. And then I just go and do it. And most of the time, because I'm not thinking of it as a chore or thinking of it as something negative that I have to do, I'm happy doing it. It's something new I learn, something new I discover. Honestly, ever since I bought a house, I've really enjoyed just being outside and like doing stuff with my plants, with my dad, like learning new things, like doing research on them. Like I poured a concrete pad with my father-in-law last week, which we'd done concrete steps, but now we did a concrete pad. So it's like it's all these new things, right? And like, yes, it is something that I had to do, or obviously I could have paid someone to do it. And if I had thought of it as a chore and like hated doing it every moment of it, like I wouldn't have learned anything. I would have just made it harder for myself. So I just accept the fact that it's something I got to do, and I made the best of it. I put my efforts into it. And now it's a new skill that I've learned. And, in the future, if I ever need to do it, I at least know how to approach it. Or if I decide to bring someone else to do it, at least I can tell if they're doing a good job or not.
Yeah, I love it overall. I mean, the idea that it's almost, if you look at it in reverse too, with fate. Like people that are successful, well, they were just fated to be successful. They were born in the right family. They did the right things, right? They had the right connections growing up. But you also don't want to like use it to discount your own hard work. The work that you put in, like just because you didn't get something, yeah, you accept it for what it is and you move on and go from there. And even with the like the housework and all that stuff, right? Using some of the other Stoic principles we talked about in the previous episodes, like you're blessed because you have a house, because you can do housework, because, you have two working hands where you can do the dishes, because there are people that are very happy, but they're born in situations where they're dealt like a very shitty hand, right? Like there's this famous motivational speaker where he was born with no arms and no legs. And people are like, how can you be happy? And he's like, well, this is just what I was dealt. And I'm happy because I get to talk to people. I get to motivate them. I get to teach them. I get to see smiling faces every day. I love it, right? I'm an inspiration to people, and there's more to life than just the like, what do you have and what do you do type shit, right? But really thinking about like overall the principles we've talked about, right? Just understanding like with anxiety, there's going to be days that suck. There's going to be days that are good. You can't control everything. I know we try to, right? Especially the I'm going to butcher the name here. The premeditatio malorum, which I feel like I'm in Harry Potter. Right? Like doing those things and planning out, like premeditating the evils, right? People with anxiety are great at that. Just remember that at the end of the day, the stuff that you're planning for may not actually come to fruition, right? Like the Seneca quote of, we suffer more often in our imaginations than in reality, because we're good at planning stuff out, saying, oh my God, what if I do this and my friends hate me, and then I say this dumb word to them and they don't like my cat joke and they don't like this and this and this, right? But at the end of the day, like it like doesn't matter at the same time that it does matter fully and all this stuff, right? Just use the exercises as you see fit as a tool set when you run into these situations, to be able to give yourself the perspective that allows you to like live your life a lot easier. Like for me, you know, there are days when I'm like, oh my God, my back's hurting. Like, what's wrong? Did I have back cancer? Right? No, WebMD told me I have back cancer. Oh my God. And then it's like, well, okay, what do I do about that? Right? Well, I guess I really couldn't do anything. I guess I could get checked out or whatever. And I think sometimes we're afraid of that and that death and looking at death, right? Memento mori, because we feel like we're not being true to ourselves. We're not living up to what we think we should be doing, right? We're like, wow, like, would I be happy if I died? No, I haven't made a big enough impact. So then go out and make that impact, right? Try new things, do stuff, like live your life. And, you know, we always go back to the whole thing of, you know, control what you can. And to the fate point, there's a lot of things you can't control. You can't control where you're born in the world, who you're born to, how rich your parents are, all those things. But there's a whole of a lot of shit you can't control. You can control your attitude on it, your perception of it, how you handle defeat, how you pick yourself back up, and how you continue day in and day out to make sure that you have that beta, always in beta mindset that Ashot was talking about, right? That growth mindset that is so often coveted in the world because so few people, I feel, actually have it. And when I personally meet somebody who shows that mindset, I am very quick to compliment them on their perspective and their mindset, because it took me a real long fucking time to get there, you know? And that's what life is about. It's about working on yourself. That's the same reason why I go to therapy, right? To work on myself, to do these things. Why we did the podcast, right? To be able to share our perspective with the world, to help others, to make a bigger impact amongst the world. And yeah, I didn't mean to soapbox there, but I kind of took the reins a little bit. Any closing thoughts on your end, Ashot?
Oh, very well said, man. Very well said. But yeah, you know, use these practices to your benefit. Again, you don't have to use all of them. You know, start with one, maybe build up from there. But I personally use a lot of these practices. Journaling has just been a hard one for me, so I haven't consistently stuck to it. But pretty much all the rest of these I use pretty much on a daily basis. So, and it helps me a lot.
You know, you could use some of the other ones to maybe think about journaling. Like, what if in the future you have dementia or Alzheimer's? And if you have your journals to reflect on and look back on, you can see how you've changed throughout the years, and you can kind of refine yourself, right? So maybe you're like, the motivation to do something for future you is because it maybe one day you'll lose the ability to write, right, or lose the ability to recall things, and that's where you find the motivation to do so.
Yeah, and I think it's less about motivation, just more about, I don't know, writing or typing just isn't my thing, so I might need to just get like a actual journal. I'll need to figure it out. It's not something that I'm worried about that much. I mean, you know, there's 8 other exercises that I'm focusing on, so the one will have to wait. But, you know, I do journal sometimes. If you look at my day one or whatever journaling app I use, and you look at the calendar, you know, there's random days where I'll journal just out of nowhere. And then there's a big gap, or I might go a couple days, and then I might go weeks or months without journaling. And I mean, again, like I said, in permanent beta, right? I'm still learning, I'm still improving, I'm still trying to get better, as all of you should as well. But anyway, thank you for listening this week, and this is the closing episode of the Stoicism series. So we hope you guys have enjoyed the series and have gotten something out of this. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you guys again on Thursday.